My name is Dylan Davenport, and this is our movie, Influences on J.R.R. Tolkien and the Creation of Lord of the Rings. J.R.R. Tolkien. The first thing you think of, or what most people think of, is Lord of the Rings. But what it comes down to is this. Without the influences, good or bad, Lord of the Rings would not be the book that it is. In this movie, we'll be talking about three major components that influenced Tolkien's writings. One being the World Wars. The second, Anglo-Saxon literature and other inspiring books, as well as his personal experiences on and off the battlefield. During much of Tolkien's life, the world was engulfed in war. Hundreds of millions of people died in this tumultuous time of human history. To say that these devastating wars did not permanently scar the mind of Tolkien would be a lie. In Tolkien, though denying the claim that the books were allegorically represented the world wars, he was quoted as saying, "By 1918, all but one of my closest friends were dead," and an author, of course, cannot remain wholly unaffected by his experience. Since the rise of the book's popularity, many theories have been developed. Some hearken the ring to the ultimate destructive power of the atomic bomb. Some compare the characters of Sauron and of Saruman to the villains of yesteryear, in Hitler and of Stalin. The dead marshes of Mordor is an eerily reminiscent of World War I's Western Front and its massive casualties. It is hard to deny some of these things, and Tolkien makes no moves to stop people from thinking this. With scenes of brutality occupying many pages in the later installments of the epic trilogy, one cannot help but glimpse into the mind of the author and see this thinly masked pain. Tolkien set out to give England a much-needed mythology that would serve its people in setting a stage for the English morality to grow. What better way to do this than include England in the stories? If one was to place a map of Middle-earth next to the map of Western Europe, one would see a striking resemblance. The beautiful pastoral images of the Shire, with its golden skies and green grass, seems to call back to a time of Tolkien's childhood, growing up in rural England. Out of the paradise landscape, we see our group of intrepid heroes form, venturing out to lands unknown to fight for a cause bigger than themselves, hunting no glory or reward, but to fight and die for what is right. Heading farther east, the valiant realms of Gondor and of Rohan occupy much of the battle lines that the world wars were fought on. Continuing west, we arrive finally at Mordor, occupying the seat of Germany, the aggressor of the infamous world wars, and committers of reprehensible acts in World War II. The World Wars were also incorporated into The Lord of the Rings by the use of the character Saruman. Tolkien was very much a traditionalist, and was not a fan of the movements made in the Industrial Revolution. He believed that humans would only be able to attain a full understanding of the universe if man fully embraced nature and became one with it. This can be seen in Lord of the Rings, when the Ent, known as Treebeard, talks about his grievances with the old wizard Saruman, who he was once good friends with. "There was a time when he was always walking about in my woods," said Treebeard. "He was polite in those days, always asking my leave, at least when he met me, and always eager to listen. I told him many things that he would never have found out by himself, but he never repaid me in like kind. I remember that he never told me anything, and he got more and more like that. His face, as I remember it, I had not seen it for many a day, became like windows in a stone wall, windows with shutters inside. I think now I understand what he's up to. He's plotting to become a power. He has a mind of metal and wheels, and does not care for growing things, except for as far as they serve him for the moment. And now it is clear that he is a black traitor. He's taken up foul folk with the orcs." Saruman is an allegory for the industrialized man, and Treebeard clearly represents nature. Treebeard is clearly upset that at one time he and Saruman were very close, but now Saruman only cares about his machines and building his army. The focus of Saruman can clearly be seen in today's industrialized society. In 1914, the United Kingdom entered World War I. Tolkien's family expected him to immediately volunteer for service, but were surprised when he held his enlistment to 1915. After completing his degree and proposing to his future wife Edith Tolkien, he enlisted in the British military, earning a position as a second lieutenant in the Lancashire Fusiliers. He trained with the 13th Battalion on Cannock Chase, Staffordshire, for 11 months and was overall displeased with his experience, complaining that gentlemen are rare among the superiors, and even human beings are rare indeed. Tolkien then arrived in France on June the 4th, 1916. During the Battle of the Somme, Tolkien served as a signals officer, progressing then to the Battle of Typeville Ridge in the following assault on the Schwaben Redoubt. The British Army of the time forced men of all walks of life to experience hardships together. This weakened the social boundaries and class divides. During his time on the battlefield, Tolkien developed a large respect for the Tommy, or British infantrymen. Quoting John Garth, he, Tolkien, had been imprisoned in a tower, not of pearl, but of ivory. In October of 1916, Tolkien developed trench fever, a lice-carried illness common in the trenches, and was sent home. Tolkien to this day is renowned as an Anglo-Saxon scholar worldwide, famous for his critically acclaimed masterpiece, Beowulf, The Monsters and the Critics. Lewis E. Nicholson is noted saying the famous article is widely recognized as a turning point in Beowulfian criticism, referring to the idea that the work should be studied for the poetic nature and not the historic linguistic elements. Tolkien single-handedly took scholars from looking at the work as dealing with childish things and monsters rather than realism, to a work addressing human destiny, thus requiring the monsters to work. More than being a scholar of these works, Anglo-Saxon literature served as a large inspiration for Lord of the Rings. Aragorn bears a striking resemblance to the heroes of these poems, regaling his lineage and claim to fame every chance he can while twirling his magical sword in front of a crowd. The kingdom of Rohan also bears a striking resemblance to the old Anglo-Saxon ways, all the way down to the names. Names like Theoden King and Eromir is but a small taste of Anglo-Saxon lineage. If one were to take Anglo-Saxon society and change the sea of water to the sea of grass, and ships to horses, one would find himself suddenly in Middle-earth. This claim is further asserted when one reads The Two Towers. When put side to side, the arrival of Aragorn to Rohan is an exact copy of Beowulf's arrival to the Danes in the poem. Change the Coast Guard to the Wall Guard, and it is almost the same word for word. Beowulf is a poem about evil, its presentation as physicality, and its representation as an internal and spiritual force. Tolkien worked to incorporate those in his series, The Lord of the Rings. To quote Jane Chance, the first book centers on the presentation of evil as external and physical, requiring physical heroism to combat it. And in the second book, centers on the presentation of evil as an internal and spiritual, requiring a spiritual heroism to combat it. Let us now talk about his other inspiring works, things that really motivated him that he denied. The first, let's start with The Worm of Ouroboros by Eric Rucker Edison. This story is a fantasy novel in which a great king faces, that's right, he goes up against the lords of a demon land. So a great king up against the lord of a demon land. Sound familiar? The place where the characters live is even called Middle-earth. However, Tolkien denies that this had any effect on his writing of Lord of the Rings. But he did say, I still think Edison as the greatest and most convincing writer of invented words that I have ever read.
Gandalf is the true essence of mythopoeia in The Lord of the Rings. This great and wise character is truly the second coming of Merlin. Merlin was the old wizard who helped teach and guide King Arthur as he was growing up. Gandalf does the same in The Lord of the Rings. This is the classic old wizard character who guides a young and untrained man into becoming a great character that defies the odds and accomplishes great things in his lifetime. In this film, we have talked about some of the key inspirations to J.R.R. Tolkien's masterpiece, The Lord of the Rings. This is by no means your average fantasy story. Tolkien went above and beyond the norm of how to write a fantasy story. He didn't just create a story, though. He created an entire world. A world so rich in culture and in-depth detail on every aspect of the world you could possibly think of. The world of Middle-earth was only made possible by the influences of Tolkien's personal life, his military experience, as well as the rich and vibrant literature he based his entire life around.
I hope you all got a lot of great information from this video. My name is Dylan Davenport. Be seeing you.